you've been asked, who are you? How are you? What do you like doing? What do you do? And how do you answer these questions? I'm Deirdré. I'm doing very well, thank you for asking. I'm a wife, a mom, and a chief executive officer. I love painting and hiking. Very simple answers, right, to very straightforward questions. And the answers simply roll off our tongues. We don't pay much thought to the answers. But have you ever thought, why are you? My story begins in 1975 in the winter in Johannesburg, South Africa. I was born to Martha and Alexander, an accountant and a carpenter that lived in the south of Johannesburg. I thought Alexander, my dad, was the most clever person that lived. I thought he knew everything about anything, and I thought he was a magician. In fact, I still believe that to this day. He was a dreamer and a warrior. Martha, or Mari, my mother, was the more practical, logical, and quieter one of the two. She was the carer and the thinker. They struggled to make ends meet, something at the time I wasn't quite aware of because they did what they could to provide for my two sisters and I. My dad also never worked for anyone. He always had his own venture on the go. And with that comes unpredictability. I remember a particularly difficult time when we had to move from the house that I loved dearly into a small apartment. And my dad, out of desperation, removed shelves from the cupboard in the apartment, from which he made two little side tables, beautiful side tables that he sold. And from the money he generated from these two side tables, he bought another piece of wood and made a desk. He sold the desk, and I think you get the drift. He bought more wood, made two desks, and he also replaced the shelving in the cupboard. And through the perseverance, my dad managed to build a business that supplied one of the largest office furniture manufacturing companies in South Africa. He also lost it all, more than once. And during these times, we relied on my mom's junior accountant's salary to get by. And I got very frustrated by this, and I remember one day going to him and saying, "Why don't you just get a job like everyone else that pays a salary?" And I was quite surprised by his answer. He looked at me, deep frown between his blue eyes, as though we were solving the problems of the world. And he clearly gave my question a lot of thought. And he replied to me, "Because what I do with my hands is not a job to me, it's my passion. I'm a carpenter because it sets me free." And I thought back at seeing him work in his workshop, and he was in a different world when he was busy making furniture and creating with his hands. And I still remember the smell of wood fondly. I'm a carpenter because it sets me free. So why am I? I've always been passionate from a really young age about the environment and people. And I remember my friends would be watching cartoons on television, and I would be reading books about the planet and animals and plants, or watching documentaries on television about conservation. And my grandfather shared this love of the environment. So we would go on hour-long walks in Johannesburg where he would share stories about the trees and fruits, which you can eat, and very, very importantly, which you should avoid. And he would share his life story about growing up in the forests in the Western Cape of South Africa, and his love for the environment. And on our walks in Johannesburg, which was a mining town back then, now a bustling metropolitan, we would encounter many mine dumps, huge mountains of powdery waste adorning the horizon. And my sisters and I used to play on these mine dumps. We'd climb up and slide down, which is why I often joke that because of all the mining dust I inhaled as a child, I probably and literally have mining in my blood. And living in the south of Johannesburg, I also observed hardship and poverty. I went to a small public school that had children from the surrounding orphanages attend. And I realized that even though we lived a really simple life, we had so much more than the children. And it sparked in me a deep need for fairness and giving back. And I remember I would take extra lunch packs to school. I would cover their books. My grandmother would bake cakes for birthdays. And I felt like even the smallest little deed made a difference. So I know I'm passionate about people and the environment. But why am I? And 35 years since my dad made that statement, I've been reflecting on this deeply. And based on my love for the people and the environment, it was quite logical that I pursued a tertiary education in just that. So I studied environmental management and psychology. My parents couldn't pay for my studies, so I always had a combination of working, study loans, and bursaries to get me through my studies. And I was very fortunate that my last years of study was fully funded by a company that wanted me to look at the environment, which made perfect sense for me as my passion, and mining. And this opened up many doors for me, but the first pivotal one was joining a government department. And I was super excited. I was a compliance officer. And I thought that is the best role that there could be. Partly because it gave me the means to pay back a study loan, which at this point was quite big. And secondly, there were so many opportunities to learn. I had to deal with big projects, tumultuous relationships between government and industry and mining and communities. And it's an experience I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. And through this period, my father was always there with wise words of encouragement. And my mother was there to be a shoulder to cry on. And I remember one difficult, and I think to this day, pivotal moment in my life, where I was appointed as a chair of a forum. And on the first day, after a lot of preparation for this forum, I walked in ready to chair the meeting. And half of the people got up and walked out. And I was perplexed by this. And it took me about 5 seconds to realize they are leaving because of me. Perception and judgment, I guess, based on what I looked like, my age, judgment on my capability, my gender perhaps. And in that moment, I felt like I had two choices. The one that was the strongest was crying and walking out of the room. But then I looked at the faces around the table, the half of the room that remained, and I decided to keep going. But I decided more than that. I was going to go beyond. And for me, to take my love for the environment and my passion for people even further, I realized I needed to learn a new language, the language of business. So I started studying accounting, finance, corporate management to make sure that I can not just excel at my passion, but take it to the next level. And this has been my fuel on my journey to find my why. And fast forward 25 years, I'm standing here in front of you, and my journey and my quest to find my why has taken me to incredible places, from operational roles to leadership roles across more than 20 countries. And through this period, I have learned so much through the eyes of the people I engage and the different cultures I encountered. Starting with Africa and South Africa, my heart and my home, that taught me to be brave. To the tundra in the Canadian Arctic, where I had a fire ceremony with First Nations that taught me to respect. To the north of Brazil in the Amazon jungle, where I ate acai berries and fish with the locals that taught me to appreciate. The vast deserts in Chile, the rolling hills of Peru that taught me to dream. Learning about culture and history and land in Australia that taught me to be curious. And now I'm humbled and privileged to call Mongolia my home, and I can't wait to see what I learned from her. And on this journey, and through these experiences, the words of my dad have been ringing true in my ears, and I have discovered that my passion for people and the environment and my quest for why have opened many doors, and it has been my fuel. So imagine how different our experiences, our conversations, our thoughts, our level of joy and satisfaction would be if we stopped asking each other who and what we are, and we start asking each other why we are. How different would that be? And how different would the answers be? I'm a doctor would become I'm a saver of lives. I'm a teacher will become I'm a shaper of minds. I'm a researcher will become I'm a finder of truth. Do we endeavor to be more than a title or a role or a nationality or a gender? Or do we truly endeavour to look at ourselves through our lens of purpose and our quest for why? I don't think my dad ever realised how impactful that very simple sentence have been in my life. And I never got around to telling him, but I am able to share that story with you. So if you'd indulge me, I'd like to introduce myself to you again through the lens of my passion and my why. So, hello, I'm Deirdré. I have a deep passion for environment and people. And I dream boundlessly and I deliver purposefully. Why are you? Thank you.